We are going to be talking a lot about the NFL offseason for the Miami Dolphins on today's episode. And make sure you are subscribed because we will have you covered every single day this offseason with news, rumors, and more. So hit that sub button, join the channel, and let's get to 67K subscribers ASAP. I am Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports, and on today's episode, we are going to look at what my perfect offseason for the Miami Dolphins would look like with Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel leading the way. Now, if I posted this video a week ago before the season ended, it would have had both Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier being fired on it, but we are going to have to do what we have to do with those two still in charge, according to Stephen Ross. They both said they were going to be retained, so we are going to now have to look at what will happen with them two still making the decisions. And the first step of a perfect offseason for the Miami Dolphins, well, it's a little ambiguous here, but you have to create some cap space because as things are currently constructed right now, you look on Over the Cap, you look at Spotrac, you look at all of the cap kind of following websites. Right now, the Dolphins are in the negative. They're a negative $2.6 million in cap. That's obviously not good for 2025, considering you're coming off of an 8-9 season. Now, I do expect a lot of things to change, but you clearly have to find creative ways to create cap space so you can go out and find other players and add to this roster so you don't have the same thing happening in 2025. Now, the two biggest question marks for the upcoming offseason, in my opinion, are Terron Armstead and Bradley Chubb. Terron Armstead has a $22.8 million cap hit, and Bradley Chubb's cap hit is $29.3 million. Armstead is contemplating retirement. Bradley Chubb didn't play at all in 2024. Do the Dolphins outright cut him post-June 1st? Do they look to trade him post-June 1st? There's a lot of different ways they can go about getting these two cap numbers down because they just simply have to. Now, the one on Terron Armstead is retirement. Is he going to retire? There's a lot of rumors that he will, and if he does retire, the Dolphins could designate that retirement post-June 1st, which would save them $15 million in cap. Now, they would still have to pay him some money, but you at least still do save $15 million, so you don't have to pay him the full $22 million. So him retiring may benefit the Dolphins in terms of creating cap space. I also think he will because he was going to retire allegedly last year. He did not. He came back with all the injuries he faced this year. I expect him to retire this offseason, clearing the way for Patrick Paul to be the starting left tackle for Miami in 25, but the Dolphins do create $15 million cap space from that. I don't predict the Dolphins will actually do it. In my perfect offseason, I am going to keep Bradley Chubb because I think a Chubb, Chop Robinson, Jalen Phillips trio at the edge position will be absolutely legendary and devastating for opponents in 25. So I'm going to try to keep Bradley Chubb and restructure his contract. And my specific restructure, pushing some of it down the line, you save $14 million in cap space this upcoming offseason. I kind of think keeping him might benefit Miami, so I am going to try to do it, and I'll restructure his contract. And then I'm going to go out and cut some more people. And these are 6 players that I have my eye on as potential cut candidates and players that I am cutting in this offseason. Raheem Mostert, Jake Bailey, Channing Tindall, Tanner Conner, Eric Ezukama, and Ethan Bonner. I know some of those players don't have a ton of cap space. Raheem Mostert and Jake Bailey are the two biggest names, but I think the Dolphins will trim the bushes, if you will, to try to create some space to sign other veteran guys. So after the restructure, after Terron Armstead retiring, after my 6 Dolphins cut candidates, the Dolphins cap space sits at $36.2 million. And if you watched our content at the end of the regular season, when people ask me about what the Dolphins will do in the offseason, I have always said it depends on the cap number that they will be working with. I've always projected it anywhere between $25 and $40 million, and I get it to 36.2 on this perfect offseason. And before we move forward with how we're going to use that cap space, let me know in the comment section who is the top Dolphins cut candidate that you possibly see happening. I think Raheem Mostert's the clear answer. He's older. He saves you the most money. You have Jalen Wright and Devon Achane rolling for the future. Step 2, and we'll keep this one brief. you're letting Jevon Holland walk. He is your biggest free agent that is on your current roster, and he is a top 5 free agent overall in this offseason, which tells you how weak the offseason class might be. And this would have been a difficult decision to make if he had a good year, because he is going to want to be paid a lot of money, but he had a bad year. I'm not paying him $18 million per season. I'm simply not. He's going to try to get 4 years, $72 million, 4 years, $80 million, somewhere in that range. I'm simply not doing it. If he had a career year, all right, then we would have to have a conversation about bringing Jevon Holland back, but he wasn't that good in coverage. He was horrific in terms of tackling, and he's regressed every single year of his career since his first couple of years out of Oregon in the Miami Dolphins system. So for that reason, I'm not bringing Jevon Holland back. I'm saving the $18 million you'd have to pay him on the cap this year and looking in other places. All right, we'll take it into step 3 now after letting Jevon Holland walk and creating some cap space, and it's time to go into free agency. And you need to address some of your top needs in free agency. But Nick, what are the biggest needs? Here are my 5 biggest needs for the Miami Dolphins in order. Interior offensive line, numero uno. In this offseason, you're going to go into it with Austin Jackson coming back at right tackle, Patrick Paul at left tackle, Aaron Brewer at center. But with Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones out of the fold, thank goodness, you need to address right guard and left guard. That's why that's number 1. Safety, overhauling the entire room. Got Patrick McMorris coming back as a second-year guy after being a 6th-round rookie out of Cal. I think he will be slotted in as your 3rd safety in 2025, but I'm replacing both Jordan Poyer and Jevon Holland. I think you need to find an off-ball linebacker to work alongside Jordan Brooks, who had an unbelievable season for Miami this year. You also need to improve and beef up your interior defensive line. You have Benito Jones and Calais Campbell as free agents. You need someone opposite of Zach Sealer, and then you also need to find a backup quarterback. Those are the 5 biggest things, in my opinion, that Miami needs to address this offseason, whether it's in the draft or free agency. And we'll start looking at who I'm signing and drafting in the draft and free agency after we tell you about Prize Picks, the number 1 daily fantasy sports platform. I play Prize Picks on a daily basis. It's so easy to play. All you do is pick more or less on at least 2 player entries, and you have a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's playoff time. It's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. Sign up today and get $50 instantly after you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks, especially in the postseason, which what I got today for the postseason in professional football, more than C.J. Stroud, 14.5 rushing yards, more than Cortland Sutton, 64.5 receiving yards. This is one example of how you can play, but you can combine sports between basketball, hockey, football, more. Combine players across leagues. You can do it all with Prize Picks, the number 1 daily fantasy sports platform. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after playing your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. That link is in the description and comments of today's video. So the first thing I'm doing in NFL free agency is signing this man right here, Will Fries, an interior offensive lineman for the Indianapolis Colts. He played right guard this season, and a lot of people out there are going to want Trey Smith, the right guard of the Kansas City Chiefs, who is the number 1 offensive guard in this free agency class. Well, here's the thing, folks. I think he's going to get an absolute bag. I think he's going to get what Robert Hunt got last season from the Carolina Panthers. So I think he's going to get $20 million per season over 4 or 5 years. And I think Will Fries is going to give you not as good production, but similar production. And I think you could get him for a little bit cheaper. This is the prized offseason edition for the Miami Dolphins, in my opinion. You sign him for a 4-year, $54 million deal, so you're getting him around $14 million per season, slightly less, and he was phenomenal for the Colts this year. 86.9 overall grade. You see the run block and pass block grades. I thought he was impressive all season long for Indianapolis. You slot him in at right guard. This is going to be not the splashiest name out there, but for the biggest need that the Dolphins have, I think Will Fries fills it perfectly, and it's why he might be my top free agent target for the Miami Dolphins. Is he the best right guard? No. But is he the best person for the Dolphins considering the cap space they have? I think so. And let me know your top free agent target down in the comments section right now. Mine is Will Fries. Let me know who yours is down in the comments section. All right, I also think the next order of business is re-signing some of your own guys. And I'll go to these three right here: Calais Campbell, Tyrell Dodson, and Benito Jones, all on the defensive side of the field. I like the way they played this season. Campbell was phenomenal. He said that he would be open to returning if he doesn't retire, so I'd sign him to a 1-year, $4 or $5 million deal. You might be able to get it less than that. Tyrell Dodson, I'm eyeing him returning potentially on a 2-year, $9 million deal, so relatively cheap contract to be your linebacker too. Opposite of Jordan Brooks. I thought those two worked pretty well together in the final couple games of the season against the Browns and the Jets. And also bring back Benito Jones on a vet min deal. I thought he did pretty well in some of his spot minutes on the interior defending the run. So I would bring these three guys back, and they're not going to cost you much, so why not pull the trigger? All right, I'm going to address backup quarterback here with Andy Dalton. Yes, Andy Dalton. He was making $5 million last season with the Carolina Panthers. I think you have to give him that same contract to come over to Miami to be your backup this year, and I am willing to do it. It was widely reported that the Dolphins had interest in Andy Dalton potentially last offseason, but also after Tua's concussion where he went on IR, it was reported that Miami could have went out and tried to trade for Andy Dalton, but Carolina was not giving him up after they benched Bryce Young, the first time, and started Andy Dalton. He's a capable starter. I think if Tua had to miss 2, 3, 4 games, you could trust Dalton to go out there and play good minutes and also potentially keep you 500, keep you afloat. I think Andy Dalton would be a great backup in Miami, and he could also be a great kind of mentor if you draft a developmental guy in the NFL draft, which I would recommend doing. The last free agent we're going to talk about is this man right here, Julian Blackmon. We're going to go back to stealing an Indianapolis Colt here. So we get Will Fries. We also get Julian Blackmon. 2-year, $14 million deal for the safety. He got paid about $4.75 million this year on a 1-year contract with Indy. He played pretty well. I think he's going to get a multi-year deal in free agency this year. I don't think he's going to be crazy expensive, but if you had to ask me, would I rather have Jevon Holland on $18 million per season or Julian Blackmon around $6 to $7 to $8 million per year? Yeah, I'm going to choose Julian Blackmon. He played pretty well, in my opinion, this year for the Indianapolis Colts, and he became one of the top targets I have identified for the Dolphins because I think they draft the safety in the first 2 days of the NFL draft, and I think they sign a veteran safety. This is my veteran safety, my top choice. I'm going out and getting Julian Blackmon for 2 years, $14 million. Which takes us to the final step of the offseason, which is the NFL draft. I think you go BPA, but you also have to do BPA, best player available, in a smart fashion. I'm not just saying take the best player available every single time. You have to pick and choose your positions of best player available. Like if there's a quarterback that you like in the third round, well, you don't be afraid to take them, and we'll kind of give you a hint on that in just a second. But when I think about the draft, and specifically the first round, I think the Dolphins picking at number 13 have to go one or two ways. If Malachi Starks is there, the safety from Georgia, I think you take him. I think he's a phenomenal player. He has a knack for being around the ball. He gets up in the box. He tackles. He defends at all three levels. I love Malachi Starks. I actually think he's going to be my number one target for the Dolphins in the draft period. But if an offensive lineman is there that you really like, I don't think you should be shying away from taking him either. And boy, do we know about the offensive lineman and Chris Grier and him not really addressing that. But it's hard for me to really go perfect mock draft here, considering we made so many additions in free agency. But I think something like this is where I lean on the perfect mess. Like in the first round in this mock draft I did, Malachi Starks went in the top 10. So we couldn't take him. But who was there? Kelvin Banks, the offensive lineman from Texas, who is projected to be an offensive tackle, but there's rumors out he could play offensive guard. So you draft Kelvin Banks. You get the best offensive lineman on the board at pick 13, and you slot him in at left guard You have now an offensive line, hypothetically, of Patrick Paul, Calvin Banks, Aaron Brewer, Will Freeze, and then Austin Jackson. I think that's a much improved offensive line from a year ago. And then you have to address your safety spot. You got Julian Blackmon. How about Xavier Watts, the safety from Notre Dame, who's probably my second safety on my big board behind Malachi Starks right now. I don't anticipate him going in the first round, so maybe you get him in the second round with your 48th overall pick. And then I go to round 3. I think an interior defensive lineman to kind of be that young guy to replace Calais Campbell after 2025 could be smart. Simeon Barrow Jr., the Hurricane that played for Miami this past year, is a good option. And then with your comp pick in round 3 and your comp pick in round 4, I'm taking Jackson Dart. He might not even be available. I like Jackson Dart. I have him as QB3 right now when I've looked at some of these quarterbacks in the draft process. I think he'll ultimately go in the first 2 rounds of the draft when we are doing it in April. But right now, he's kind of not in that range, so I'll take him at pick 99. And then I also think drafting a big-bodied wide receiver to kind of be a red zone threat, but also potentially replace Tyreek Hill if you trade him, is a smart idea. So I'm going Kyron Lacy, the talented wide receiver from LSU, 6'2", 6'3", physical, can win over the middle of the field, can beat you, contested catch rate. I think that is a really good option on early day 3 of the NFL draft. So that is how the first 4 rounds would go for me in some capacity. You dress the offensive line, you draw a safety, get a defensive line, a developmental quarterback, and a big-bodied wide receiver. There's a bunch of big physical wide receivers in this draft that I think will be available for Miami to target in late day 2, early day 3 of this draft. So to summarize my perfect offseason, you can't calculate every move. It's just too impossible to do in one video, and it's just pointless because there's no chance I'm getting them all right. But in my perfect offseason, that's how you go, right? You address the offensive line by signing Will Freeze, drafting Kelvin Banks. You got safety in Julian Blackmon and Xavier Watts, and you have Patrick McMorris as your third safety. You got your quarterback situation behind Tua figured out. Andy Dalton to be your backup this year. Jackson Dart as your developmental quarterback to see if he's anything special, and maybe the Tua replacement long term, or just another solid backup. Plus, you get more guys returning on the defensive line, off-ball linebacker, wide receiver. I think this is overall a pretty solid offseason. It's what I think the most realistic perfect offseason is. Obviously, the Dolphins can't go out there and sign Trey Smith, sign T. Higgins, sign Chris Godwin, get them all. So I think when you think realistically, this is as good as it possibly could get for the Miami Dolphins. And let me know if you agree. Grade my offseason for the Miami Dolphins. In a perfect world, and this happens in my opinion, how would you grade it? A, B, C, D, or F? Are you with me in terms of perfection? That'd be an A+. If you think I don't know what I'm talking about, you could type your Fs. I'm not going to hold you to it, but let me know what you guys think. And make sure you guys do subscribe as well, because we're dropping daily content on the Miami Dolphins. And when we get around the draft, get around free agency, Dolphins making moves, we will have you covered every step of the way. So hit that sub button and join the channel. Go Fins.